Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Peak, and I am the principal investigator for the National Science Foundation supported CONVERGE facility, which is headquartered at the Natural Hazard Center at the University of Colorado Boulder. CONVERGE is dedicated to connecting researchers across disciplines to advance ethical, interdisciplinary, convergence-oriented research. On behalf of the entire team, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the CONVERGE webinar series. Today, during this brief 30-minute demonstration webinar, we are going to share the latest CONVERGE training module, which focuses on conducting emotionally challenging research. This is a topic that is not always discussed in our research methods courses or in our textbooks, but it is so important to consider the emotional dimensions of the work that we do. To that end, I actually wanted to begin today by sharing a brief story with you. The 9/11 terrorist attacks happened when I was just starting my third year of graduate school. I traveled to New York City only weeks after the attacks to launch a study of backlash and discrimination against Muslim Americans. While my truly gifted advisors and professors had helped to prepare me in terms of my research design and methodological approach, I was not fully ready for the emotional weight that the work would carry. Some days I would conduct interviews and focus groups for many hours on end, often listening to heartbreaking stories of the disaster itself, as well as the verbal and physical violence that many interviewees had been subjected to. As a young graduate student, I had been trained to process what I was hearing from an analytical standpoint, but not from an emotional standpoint. I hope that the training module that you will hear about today can help all of us to build our awareness regarding the potential emotional difficulties associated with hazards and disaster research, but also regarding how harnessing the power of our emotions can actually make us stronger researchers. We are so grateful that you have joined us today. A few logistical items before proceeding any further. This webinar is being recorded. The captioned recording and slides will be posted on the CONVERGE website at converge.colorado.edu/communications. Should you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please use the Q&A box or the chat box. If we are unable to respond during this brief webinar, we will post written responses on the CONVERGE webinar webpage for this session. One of the major tasks of the CONVERGE project is to accelerate the education and training of a diverse next generation of hazards and disaster researchers and practitioners. We recognize that disaster research is often highly event-driven. In order for the field to progress, it is crucial that those new to this area of study have access to already existing research and an understanding of various methodological approaches and potential ethical challenges. To help, our CONVERGE research team is creating a series of free online training modules that are specifically designed for students, emerging researchers and practitioners, and others new to the field who hope to quickly background themselves on key information. Thus far, we have released modules on social vulnerability, disaster mental health, cultural competence, institutional review board procedures for extreme events research, and, as you will hear about today, conducting emotionally challenging research. Over the coming years, we will continue to offer individual certificates for each of these modules, while also building toward a credentialing system for hazards and disaster researchers to help ensure a minimum competence in the field and to democratize access to information through providing these free resources. These training modules can also be used as a classroom assignment or competency requirement to ensure that students and others new to the field have a baseline level of knowledge and skills as they move forward with their efforts. To further encourage classroom adoption, we have partnered with educators to create the CONVERGE Training Modules Assignment Bank. Thus far, we have 6 model assignments posted online for classes at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. Since our last webinar, we've added 2 new assignments. One from Reggie Ferreira at Tulane University, who contributed his assignment on human and social factors of disaster. It involves having students complete a CONVERGE training module and then engage in a tabletop exercise. The other new contribution is from Regina Menandar at Arkansas Tech, who submitted her cultural competence in hazards and disaster research assignment. Thank you, Reggie and Regina. Yang Zhang, I know that you are out there today with your senior class and your graduate students from Virginia Tech, so we will look forward to receiving an assignment from you soon. To all the other educators out there, if you have used the training modules in your class, we would welcome your contribution to the assignment bank. Please contact us at converge@colorado.edu if you have an assignment to share. Now, we are going to turn to the demonstration portion of the webinar. You will hear today from 3 talented researchers from the Department of Sociology at the University of Colorado Boulder. Berta Bermudez Tapia, a PhD candidate in sociology, Tracy Fair, also a PhD candidate in sociology, and Sky Niles, a doctoral student in sociology, served as the lead developers for the emotionally challenging research module. Berta, Sky, and Tracy all have extensive experience conducting emotionally challenging research. Berta's work focuses on gender and migration, and she has studied immigrant and refugee receiving centers along the US-Mexico border. Sky has conducted research on the response of healthcare workers in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, and Tracy conducted research on the local unintended impacts of development following the devastating 2015 earthquake in Nepal. She is now completing a gendered analysis of Nepal's unfolding transitional justice process following the country's decade-long civil war. Given the emotional challenges associated with their own work, Berta, Tracy, and Sky joined together to launch an emotionally challenging research group here at CU Boulder. They joined our CONVERGE team in the summer of 2019 to launch the development of this module, and were later joined by Rachel Adams, Candace Evans, and myself to finish the module you will hear about today, and that we hope you will consider completing and sharing with others. With that, it is such an honor to be joined by you, Berta, Tracy, and Sky. And Berta, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And as Lori mentioned, my name is Berta Bermudez Tapia, and I work on reviewing the literature and developing the narrative that appears in this model. Today, I'm going to start by providing a broad definition for emotionally challenging research. When we began this project, we first reviewed existing literature that discussed the emotionally challenges of conducting research and found that there was not a uniform term used across disciplines or scholarship. Therefore, for this model, we choose to use the term emotionally challenging research, or ECR for short, as an umbrella term to encompass difficulties that researchers may face throughout the research process that could trigger challenging emotions within themselves, including feelings such as discomfort, pain, anger, or sadness. ECR is particularly important to understand for hazards and disaster researchers because we often interact with people who have experienced loss and suffering, and therefore may be experiencing their own sadness, anxiety, anger, or other strong emotions. ECR can also affect researchers beyond fieldwork. For example, reviewing media coverage, secondary data, transcripts, or other material can also evoke these strong emotions. With that definition in mind, I'm going to provide an overview of the Conducting Emotionally Challenging Research training model. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that this is a lot of text that you're seeing here. So I want to first take a moment and orient you. What you can see right now is that the conducting emotionally challenging research training model is organized in 4 lessons: background, emotionally challenges in extreme events research, methodological approaches and emotionally challenging research, and finally, coping with emotionally challenging research and harnessing the power of emotions. Within each of these lessons are different topics, which present interactive information that aims to achieve a specific set of learning objectives. By the end of this model, participants will be able to define emotionally challenging research, understand why recognizing and understanding emotions is an important part of the research process, identify specific ways in which extreme events research can be emotionally challenging for researchers, understand how particular power dynamics and positionalities can affect researchers, recognize the complex effects of emotions in research, including both detrimental impacts as well as positive development and growth, explain how various methodological research approaches may present different emotional challenges, understand the additional emotional challenge that can accompany in-person field research, learn strategies to effectively and ethically cope with the potential impacts of conducting ECR. And finally, to understand how you can harness the power of your emotions to advance your research and applications. On the right side of the page, there is a tracking bar where you can track your progress as you move through the model lessons and topics. Once you have completed a topic, you can always go back and review at a later time. I am now going to turn it over to Tracy Fair, who will show you a little bit more of this model.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Berta. Hi, everyone. My name is Tracy, and I also work with Berta and Sky to develop the research-based module narrative. Today, I'm going to show you some module content, including one of the stories from the field that we feature throughout the module. First, emotionally challenging research often involves 2 different processes. Emotional labor, which refers to the process of managing your own emotions in order to meet the social expectations of your role or profession. And the other process, emotionally sensed knowledge, which refers to the epistemology of emotion, where emotion contributes to understanding and knowledge that ultimately will strengthen our research and its findings. So what do emotions have to do with research? This question has long been central to discussions of how valid, objective, and reliable knowledge is produced. For many traditional scientists, discussing the link between emotions and research is often avoided, as emotions and the inner world of the researcher more broadly are generally considered to detract from one's ability to make objective observations and conclusions in research. However, feminist and interpretive scholars have long recognized that it is impossible to separate emotions from research, for we are first and foremost human beings and conduct research embedded within a social world. Scholars have also argued that paying attention to the emotional dynamics of research can provide important sources of knowledge and insight that can enrich the research process and improve research ethics. Therefore, this training module recognizes that emotions are a core aspect of what makes us human and impacts us both in our daily lives as well as in our research lives. Therefore, this module emphasizes the importance of researcher emotions as a core part of the research process itself. It specifically focuses on how the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotional labor and emotions throughout the research process can enhance the ethical practice and the methodological rigor of extreme events research. Throughout the module, we provide case studies and stories from the field to illustrate content. For instance, in the background lesson, we begin with an excerpt from Ruth Behar's The Vulnerable Observer, Anthropology That Breaks Your Heart, which illustrates some of the emotions that can accompany disaster research. Quote, in the midst of a massacre, in the face of torture, in the eye of a hurricane, in the aftermath of an earthquake, or even, say, when horror looms apparently more gently in memories that won't recede, and so come pouring forth in the late night quiet of a kitchen, as a storyteller opens her heart to a story listener, recounting hurts that cut deep and raw into the gullies of the self. Do you, the observer, stay behind the lens of the camera, switch on the tape recorder, keep pen in hand? Are there limits of respect, piety, pathos that should not be crossed, even to leave a record? But if you can't stop the horror, shouldn't you at least document it? End quote. And this quote, discussing the emotional challenges involved in the role of the researcher, is just one of the field stories featured throughout the module to enhance understanding of the material covered with real-world examples. In addition to the module's written and interactive visual content, we have also compiled a list of additional resources relevant to conducting emotionally challenging research. Within the Resources tab, the top right corner of the screen, we provide links to additional readings, tools, and other web resources that you can access. Please note that you must be logged into the module to access these resources. At the end of the module, you can take a 10-question quiz to assess what you have learned. All in all, this module takes about 30 to 60 minutes to complete. If you are an instructor considering these for classroom use, please know that we have a quiz bank that is on a random generator. That means if you assign this to your students, they will not all get the same questions. If you get at least 8 out of 10 questions correct, you will receive a certificate of completion with your name and the date. You can save the certificate as a PDF and can also access it at a later date through your training module login information. I'm now going to turn this over to Sky. Sky is going to conduct a demonstration of the CONVERGE ECR training module. While Sky is getting ready for the demonstration, let me remind everyone that you can register for the module at converge.colorado.edu/training-modules. Sky, over to you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for that introduction. As Tracy said, I am now going to walk you through a demonstration of the ECR training module. This module covers a number of important topics related to conducting emotionally challenging research. One lesson defines ECR and discusses the role of emotions in the research process. Another focuses on the emotional challenges within hazards and disaster research. The third highlights the emotional challenges that can arise across different methodological approaches. And the last lesson explores different strategies to help cope with the emotional impacts of research. For the sake of time, I am just going to guide you through the methodological approaches and emotionally challenging research lesson. This lesson discusses the emotional challenges that can arise when researchers use a range of methodological approaches commonly employed by hazards and disaster researchers. In addition, it highlights specific emotional issues hazards and disaster researchers may face when conducting in-person fieldwork. The first topic in this lesson is methodological approaches. Here we begin by prefacing this section of the module with the recognition that emotional challenges in research can arise across disciplines, methodologies, and research topics. We take the position that regardless of whether the researcher is talking to people directly, assessing damage to infrastructure following a disaster, or analyzing previously collected data on disaster loss, extreme events research can evoke a wide array of emotions, thoughts, and feelings. Recognizing these feelings can improve the quality of the research and the capacity of the researcher to do their work ethically. The module then proceeds with the discussion of different methodological approaches and the emotional challenges that might arise with each. In the field research topic, the module explains how field research can be especially emotionally challenging as researchers are working in close contact with their participants who experienced a potentially traumatic event. For example, in their ethnographic study examining the experiences of children in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, Fothergill and Peak used a longitudinal research design in which they conducted interviews, observations, and focus groups over a 7-year period. In their book, the researchers describe how they faced unanticipated emotional issues throughout the research process, especially as they developed deeper personal relationships with the participants and their families. The next topic focuses on remote data collection and secondary data analysis. This type of research involves less contact with participants, particularly in cases where the survey is self-administered, such as online or via mail. Once data is collected, however, the subsequent analysis may pose emotional challenges. For instance, surveys may include open-ended responses where participants may write in responses that are difficult for the researcher to read. As data analysis commences, researchers may uncover patterns that reflect social inequalities and unequal loss and harm. These analyses can trigger emotional distress or discomfort in some researchers. The last topic in this section, damage assessment of the built environment, describes how engineers and geoscientists often conduct early damage assessments in order to understand how various types of infrastructure, bridges, roads, high-rise buildings, schools, hospitals, and single-family homes, for example, performed in an earthquake, hurricane, or other disaster. These damage assessments are important for understanding vulnerability to disasters and reducing future risk and harm. Yet witnessing the immediate aftermath of a disaster can be emotionally challenging for anyone present, even if they are not conducting human subjects research. While conducting damage assessments, researchers may still be exposed to scenes where many people have died or been injured, or where important cultural buildings or neighborhoods may have been damaged or destroyed. At the end of each lesson, there is a brief knowledge check, which is a 2-question quiz to make sure the user is engaged and paying attention. The knowledge check does not count towards the final quiz. For those joining via your screen, you can see 2 multiple choice questions. The first question asks, true or false, engineering damage assessments are not considered emotionally challenging because engineers do not talk to people when they are doing their research. There are 2 response options, true and false. I am going to press false. The second question asks, why are researchers who use qualitative methods likely to experience emotional challenges during research? The response options are, they care more about their research participants than those who do secondary data analysis. They often work directly with people and they tend to listen to their stories and observe them in places where they live. They are most likely to find patterns in quantitative data sets that explain qualitative narratives. Or none of the above. Researchers who conduct qualitative research are the most unlikely to experience harm because of their deep personal connections to the research participants. I am going to press the second option. To submit my responses, I press Finish Assessment. I now have the option to view questions and check whether I got the answers correct. As you can see, both of my answers are correct. I wanted to point out one more thing during this demonstration. As Tracy discussed earlier, the module has a Resources tab where additional resources are listed that can support researchers involved in emotionally challenging work. These resources include tools, literature reviews, and other web resources related to conducting emotionally challenging research and dealing with emotions. Each of these resources is also hyperlinked. For example, if I press the Idaho State University ProQual Self-Care Pocket Cards link, it will bring me to a downloadable PDF of this resource. That concludes our demonstration today. We are now going to return to the webinar slides. We hope that this webinar has been useful for you today. We also wanted to let you know that the next CONVERGE training module will be released, focusing on the topic of understanding and ending gender-based violence in fieldwork. Following that, the CONVERGE team will release another module focused on the topic of broader ethical considerations in extreme events research. We will be hosting a brief demonstration of webinar just like these ones on each of these modules and the other ones that are part of these series as they become available. A few reminders before I turn this back over to Lori to close out this session. To contact us about any questions or suggestions that you have, please email us at converge@colorado.edu. To register for and access the CONVERGE training modules, as well as this training recording, please visit the CONVERGE website at converge.colorado.edu. Lori, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Sky, and thank you, Sky, Tracy, and Berta for the presentation today and for all of your work over this past year on this module. Your leadership in this space and your ability to see the need for this kind of training has inspired all of us around here. And I just want to, on behalf of our whole research community, thank you for the work that you have done. So thank you again. And as Sky said, I'm going to share just a little bit more information before we close out today, including bringing you all up to date on where we are at in terms of the advancement with the training modules. So as of today, 1,896 people have registered for the CONVERGE training modules. And this includes students, academics, government officials, private sector professionals, and others. Thus far, we've had 570 people who have successfully completed the social vulnerability and disasters module and received that certificate, 324 who have completed the disaster mental health module, 232 have completed the cultural competence module, and 109 have completed the IRV and extreme events research module. We hope that if you haven't completed these 4 modules or the new one on conducting emotionally challenging research, that you will please check them out and share them. This module that you learned about today would not have been possible without the support of the National Science Foundation. And we especially want to thank our program directors, Joy Pauschke, Jacqueline Mazzaros, and Walt Peacock for all of their support and guidance. We also want to acknowledge the entire team here at the Natural Hazards Center. Everyone here has contributed to this module in some way, either through reviewing the content, testing the online learning management system, or otherwise supporting this effort. Our undergraduate and graduate students and other team members took the time to carefully review this module and to provide us with detailed feedback, and we are so very grateful. And finally, on behalf of Rachel, Candace, Sky, Berta, and Tracy, we thank all of you for joining with us today for this webinar, which again will be posted on the CONVERGE webinar webpage. And we hope that you will please sign up for updates and information at converge.colorado.edu/sign up. Thank you so much, everyone. We are at the end of our time today, but we want to let you know you can always reach out to us at converge@colorado.edu if you have questions, comments, or suggestions. And finally, please remember to take care of yourself and others. Have a great day.